Welcome. Hey, I'm Benny Jackson from Stems by Benny Jackson right here in Lubbock, Texas. We're located in the Village Shopping Center on 82nd and Quaker, and we certainly would invite you in. But today I just wanted to give you a little tutorial on making a container arrangement. And because we're in the fall season, or it's approaching us quickly, this is going to be a fall arrangement, and this is actually a custom piece for a customer of ours. But I just wanted to show you and walk you through how I do it if you're in question of how to make an arrangement and where to get started. We're going to start with this black wooden bowl, and because it is a bowl and it's concave on the inside, I'm using these dry foam blocks for my mechanics here, and you can use styrofoam as well. I tend to like these, but what I do is I cut the corners and I mold it, if you will, to the shape of this bowl somewhat, so that it rests in there right and there's not a lot of air or openness under them, because I'm about to dip these into my hot glue pan and smear glue all over the bottom, so I obviously want it to adhere to the bowl. So I just shave those corners off, and when you do this enough, you just sort of get a feel for how it's going to fit in there. So I don't know if you can see, but now it's touching the bottom of the bowl all the way around. And because this is a custom arrangement, you're going to see me stopping and starting, because I will be writing down the products, because that's the only way I have to keep up with this customer's budget. And so I do encourage you, if you are doing this for resale, if you're making things and wanting to sell them, you have to write your products down, or you will lose money, because you will forget every last thing you put in it. Don't guess at it. The other way is to add it all up before you start, but I don't know exactly what I'll be using, if I'll use everything I've pulled, so I just write it as I go. But that's just my business recommendation if you're doing it as any type of business. The next thing I want to do is just cover that foam with moss. Sometimes I treat moss as part of the ingredient list, if you will, meaning I don't care that the moss shows, and obviously I never want the foam to show. So this just gives it that finished, professional look instead of that homemade, crafty look. Another tip is I've reworked arrangements for people in the past, and when I go to pull them apart to use their container, I find price tags on those pieces. So remember to take all those tags off and things like that. Make a difference for that finished, professional look. And I'm not taking a lot of pains with this foam, this moss, because not much of it's going to actually show. If you're wondering what I'm doing now, I'm using greening pins to hold that moss in place. Almost the most important part of a floral design, honestly, are the mechanics. If it's not put together well, it's not going to last. And especially a holiday arrangement, it's not going to be out year round, it's going to be stored somewhere, so you want it to last. So that is in there, it's glued, and it's ready to go. Okay, this is actually meant for an island, a kitchen island, and so it's a large island, so we're going to increase the volume, increase the size of this by letting branches hang out the ends of it. Move some things out of my way here. Okay, if you watched a previous tutorial that I did on making wreaths, I talked about how important it is to cut all of your stems. I cut stems because I think artificial things, obviously because they're artificial, look artificial, but they look more fake when you leave them intact. And so they begin to take on a more natural feel when you can cut them apart and bend them and shape them. And just keep in mind, you do soft crescent shapes to your stems, not harsh 90-degree angles. And you just think about how things grow in nature. There's gentle bends to it. They're not harsh. Now I like my foam to always be just at least level with the top of my container, if not a little bit higher, so that as I start to insert things, it doesn't look like it's down in the bowl, but it's going to look like it's planted when it's all finished. So don't be afraid for that foam to stick up a little bit above the rim of your container. And again, that's the way it comes, but we want to open that up, air it up, if you will, and just give it a little shape. And then when it's all said and done, when we're finished, then we can go back and see places that might need a little more shaping. I'll tell you what I'm probably going to do here. I'm going to add one more piece because we're going to be putting some pumpkins in this. So I'm going to want them to have some nice levels in this. So I'm going to pull that moss back and add a little more foam before I get too far along here. If you don't have greening pins, you can certainly take wire and cut it and bend them, but this is just, in my opinion, the better way, because that's what they're meant for, and they're already shaped and cut, and we're using them as they are intended. The other thing I personally do is if I use like this little bush, I'm going to cut it apart, but I'm going to use all of this. I'm not going to have any waste to it. So I will use it all in here. But there are times, if something were really large, for instance, or if your container was really small, don't use it if it all of a sudden makes it look clumpy and too much. But generally speaking, and I'm coming from the business standpoint, once I cut this, it becomes the customer's, if you will. So they paid for it, so I want them to have all of their product. Otherwise, it becomes waste, and it's not fun to waste things. So most of the time, I use all the pieces. So I'm just cutting all that off that bush. And there are occasions, you know, a bush like this, small, I can use that whole bush and insert it and it not look fake, because this is just filler, really. It's not going to be a major part of the design. You're not going to see it a lot. It's just filling in some holes. And what I will make sure of, because this is going on an island, I will make sure that both the front and the back look complete. It's not going to have a back to it exactly. It'll look finished on both sides. Before I get too far along, because I'm going to use some large pumpkins, I probably want to go ahead and start placing those in now so they can cradle in there nicely. I write these down, and I did not write this stem down because I'm talking to you folks, and I forgot you folk. This is what I just cut up, so I'm seeing what the price was on that. And it's important to get all those little tags off. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to dig in my trash can. I'm going to cut one of these stems right here off of that bush that I used in something else, cutting all those leaves off. What I'm about to do is make a pick out of that stem that was in the trash can. Because this is a foam pumpkin, just push that right up in there. We've glued it in, and now we just slather glue on the end of that, and that'll just go right there in our foam. And then we'll just do that again. In fact, see, I'm going to put this one on the side of it. It doesn't have to be on the bottom every time, because now we're going to insert this from the side, and this helps us start to get a little dimension. You can see that's hanging off the bowl there, but it's going to have a layered look, and they won't be equal value in that bowl by doing that. And then when you add length like this, you got to be careful not to get it in your glue pen if you use a glue pen, like I just did, so I had to cut that tip off. And we're using this light blue pumpkin in here because although it's a fall arrangement, she does want it to have hints of blue because that's the color scheme in her kitchen, but it's not going to be heavy with blue. I've got some blueberries that we'll eventually use. Okay, now I'm going to take these fall leaves. Again, it's in a bundle. So we're just going to cut that bundle apart. I don't know, y'all aren't possibly as messy as I am, but it's easier just to let things fall to the floor and clean up after you're finished. And I try to gently shape every stem that I use before I ever insert it into the arrangement. And then, like I said, at the end of it, when I feel like it's finished, then I'll go back, and if something needs a little more shaping, we'll do that. If that stem's too long, don't be afraid to cut stems. I put that in there. I don't know that you can tell on camera, but I've put it in there at a slight angle because I'm trying to create dimension, and then I can go back into these low places if needed and fill in, but I'm trying to give it some elevation. The other thing I want to use in this are some succulents. I think succulents are a great neutral, and they're so realistic looking. Obviously they look great by themselves. I've worked them into really more formal arrangements, but they work in great with this fall, and I even think they're really pretty in with some Christmas designs as well. But they're just fun to, I think, to work with. They give a great textural difference. Sometimes, like this, it's good to take your knife and slit that foam, possibly I did not, to get that big chunky stem in there. Let's see. Generally, and I use that word loosely, generally I like to work with one product as in that. We started with that, we used all of it on both ends, and now I'm done with that product. But occasionally I'll come back and think, oh, I need a little bit more of that in one place or the other. But I'm gonna break that rule. I'm using all these succulents right now, but I will go back and use another one of these. I sometimes have a hard time multitasking, as in designing and talking, so that's what happened there. Okay, I think what we'll do is go ahead and use another one of these, and we'll work it on the other side. And we just do a quick shaping. And as I said in another tutorial on making a wreath, when you're shaping artificial stems, just put a nice gentle curve or bend to them, but don't try to put a harsh bend in them, because that's not really how anything grows. Okay. You know, we're just back here in my workroom. It's always a horrible mess, but that's just the way design rooms are. But what we did, we stopped the video for a second. I moved this onto a lower table, so hopefully you can see the design a little bit better as it's moving forward in its completion. I did just dribble some glue on my container. You know, if you're using a glue pan, to me it sticks better and it's easier to work with than a glue gun. A glue gun to me gives more spider webs than a glue pan. But regardless, if you get those webs, and I get them with this as well, when it's all said and done, don't forget to go back and clean those up. I've seen so many people, not so many, I've seen people make a piece and it looks good, but they forgot to clear those webs off, so it looks messy and it looks very amateurish. So make sure all those spider webs, glue webs, are taken off when it's finished. Love this little bittersweet berry here. I mean, that says fall. If anything says fall, that does. That's just nice looking. And I am going to use the whole little bush in this instance. Once it's finished, we'll turn this so you can see it all. What I'm seeing is I've got a lot of browns, a lot of oranges and golds in the foliage, which I love for fall, but I'm going to go back in with some green eucalyptus here in a second, because I'm feeling like it needs some green for the contrast to really pop it. To do here, I've got all these orders stacked up here, and I should have cleared it off, but I'm going to use a pick machine. And if you've never used one, or you don't know what I'm saying when I say pick machine, it's a steel pick, so it gives me a good strong end to insert that into the foam, and it locks in that foam better. And on smaller stems especially, you want it to lock in and not wallow out. And then that glue just gives it added strength, so this arrangement will stay together. And if you don't do this a lot, it's probably not worth investing in a pick machine, but if you do this as a hobby all the time, you see I just run out of picks. Isn't that the way it goes? These are super long, but I'm out. So we're just going to load this quickly and keep going. If you do use a pick machine, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, listen up. They come in these little plastic sleeves that you can't see. Don't take that plastic sleeve off till you drop it down in your pick machine, or you'll have steel picks everywhere. And because they're really sharp, they really will cut you. So you got to be careful. But I probably learned that the hard way a long time ago. You take that plastic covering off those picks after you insert them into the machine. And you don't have a mess everywhere. I don't know if you can tell yet from your angle, but that green is going to help bring some contrast to all that orange that's in there. I'm going to come back with some really dark berries. And the whole direction for this, as far as color, and I'm not going to forget it, but we'll add some blue berries to this, which will then make sense of why we put that light blue pumpkin in. I'm not being super symmetrical with this. I've got one on each side, but I'm about to add a third one to this end down here. So there's going to be two of these on one end and a single one on the other. I've left that stem just a little bit longer so I can let it hang out of the container. And these now won't be even. Also have these really pretty ranunculus that I want to add in there. And I think what we're going to do, we're going to cluster these in there. I'm going to show you a little trick. These are already bound. That's the way they're sold in that whole little bundle. Sometimes little bitty things like that individually, they don't make a huge statement, but when you can cluster, it makes a big impact. So I'm going to leave that whole cluster together, and I'm going to use, I'm sorry I've forgotten the gauge wire that this is, but it's a thick wire. I'm going to get me a good long piece, and I'm just going to hairpin that. I'm going to lay these where I want them. You won't be able to see this exactly, but then I'm just going to hairpin this whole cluster into that foam. And then if I see any stems, I can go back and cut those out. I'll turn this around so you can see what I just did. So I had those. They sort of ended up curved. I wedged them down in there, and then I hairpinned them. And so that's what that effect does. And you get a lot more impact when you see that strong volume of color all together instead of scattered. And because this is going on an island, like I said, and we're going to see it from both directions, I want to put another cluster on this back side. Hairpin those down in there. I'm not even going to cut those stems because by the time I finish adding, you won't even see that. In fact, We'll use this. It's a form of wheat or millet, I believe. It's not real, but it looks like a dried product, sort of. I'm going to decide where I want these. These are a strong enough stem, I'm not going to worry about picking those. You know, if you do this a lot, I encourage you to invest in a great pair of wire cutters. A lot of these stems today take some strength to cut them, so a good pair of wire cutters is really important. There's also wire cutters, you know, that have a spring on them, so if you have carpal tunnel or arthritis in your hands, the ones with springs can really be your friend as well. So again, I'm just doing a cluster effect with these in 2 places. Okay, what I see is a hole. I'm going to add one more succulent because I see a hole that I want to fill. And I think where I need this, I don't need quite so much stem, and here's one of those examples. If I had a measly, wimpy little pair of cutters, I would have been gnawing on that for 30 minutes. Instead, those good cutters cut right through it. And that's the one that's covering the stems of those little orange ranunculus that we put in there a while ago. Okay, now we're going to come back in and add our blueberries. And I think what we'll do, I could easily get 3 cuts off of this, but I think in this case we're just going to do 2 cuts. Pull those berries apart. That looks different than that. This, again, we're making this for an island in a kitchen. It's a large island, so it's going to make a great impact out in the center of that island, and all of a sudden she's going to feel decorated and look decorated for fall with one great piece out in the middle instead of a lot of little stuff that might get lost. I did fail to put the pick on that, and that's okay. We're gonna go with it. Okay, and I believe we're gonna call that finished. All right, so I'm calling it done. I think it's finished. So that's the side you've been seeing. There's the top of it. And that's the side you were not seeing. So I would love to make something similar like this for you. If you're not a designer, if you don't want to get your hands into it, you just want it done, this is what I do. So I'd love to do it for you. You can contact us right here at Stems by Benny Jackson, 82nd and Quaker in the Village Shopping Center in Lubbock, Texas. And our phone number is 806-778-2864. And I would invite you to subscribe and even share this with your friends, and we will be doing more tutorials. Can't speak now, but doing more tutorials as we get into Christmas season as well. So I hope you'll join us again, and if I can be of service to you, please call me. I also have all of this product for sale if you like to do things yourself. Come in, shop the raw ingredients, and go home and enjoy. Thanks again.